Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays, hosted by someone's favorite film buff, Nathan. I love movies and I want to share that with you. From old originals to cult classics and foreign favorites, along with straight up drivel, WWW is your place for all things movies. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
88 won the Burg, your movie central. Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays. My name is Nathan, the host of What to Watch Wednesdays, the show where we talk about 3 movies all in the same night. And for tonight's episode, we're going to be taking a look at a trilogy of movies that I've always wanted to watch, and I guess subsequently wanted to review here on What to Watch Wednesdays. I've known of this trilogy for quite a while, and it's always been on the watch list, but it wasn't until I started the show that I realized, hey, I could totally talk about this and watch them. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone, as they say. So, without further ado, the trilogy we're going to be talking about tonight is the Rush Hour trilogy, starring Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker, and comprising of the 3 movies, Rush Hour from 1998, Rush Hour 2 from 2001, and closing out with Rush Hour 3 from 2007. I will say, not only has this trilogy been one that I've been wanting to watch and talk about for a while, it's also kind of thematically tied in, to the movies we've been talking about this quarter specifically, because these are all action cop comedy movies that have at least one Hong Kong actor in all of them, that being Jackie Chan. With the movies I've been talking about this quarter, I think it ties in pretty nicely. So, what better way to end out the quarter with this trilogy? When we get back from the break, we'll jump into the original Rush Hour from 1998. Stick around for that. 88 won the Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our first movie on the watch list, if the microphone will stop fighting me to stay in the place that I want to put it in, will be Rush Hour from 1998, available to rent now from places such as YouTube, Amazon, and Fandango at home. For the basic plot summary of the original Rush Hour, we follow Hong Kong Police Force Chief Inspector Lee, who is played by Jackie Chan, and Los Angeles Police Department Officer Carter, who is played by Chris Tucker. These two must team up to track down the kidnapped daughter of a Chinese diplomat, who just so happens to be a friend of Lee, and the daughter is also a friend of Inspector Lee. So he's got more of a personal connection than Carter does, let's put it that way. And what an interesting connection I have with this movie to begin with. Let me tell you kind of some backstory. When it comes to my understanding of the Rush Hour trilogy, I had always seen the movies on HBO Max back when I first got the service, like back in 2020, 2021 era kind of times. And I remember seeing them kind of show up every single time I'd go to the website or something like that and being like, hey, those look kind of interesting and they've got Jackie Chan in it. I should give those a watch at some point. I don't know who this other guy is, but I want to watch these. These sound kind of fun and interesting and funny. And then like 5 years passed, and then I remembered when I was making a list of stuff for me to talk about on What to Watch Wednesdays this year, I was like, oh wait, isn't Rush Hour technically a trilogy because there's 3 of them? Yeah, I'll put that on the list somewhere. I should talk about these eventually. And then it was like, oh, I should save these for a special occasion. And then it just so happened to be that this week, I finally decided, you know what? Let me sit myself down more importantly, and pop these into my DVD player and just kind of watch them right now. And I'm really glad I did with the first movie at the very least, because I've always wanted to watch it. I've always wanted to give it a try and see what it looks like, what it sounds like, feels like. You get what I'm saying. Those weren't really coherent thoughts about it. But the thing that is coherent is that this movie stars Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker. And in order to get to kind of the heart of what makes Rush Hour work or doesn't work, you do have to kind of examine the 2 leads, because they are definitely the main selling points of this trilogy. They're the important parts. They're the things that everybody remembers, their interactions with each other, their dynamics, and what each of them does individually over the course of the first movie specifically that has stuck with people for so long. Because of that, we have to start with one of them. And personally, I'd rather start with Chris Tucker, because we're all going to know and expect what I'm about to say about Jackie Chan, so might as well start with the unique stuff first. Chris Tucker playing the LAPD officer James Carter, I think is his name. I don't remember his first name. I remember his last name of Carter. And it's pretty easy to remember because his real name is Chris Tucker, and that starts with a C, and Chris doesn't sound too far off from Carter. If you put Chris and Tucker together, it sounds somewhat like Carter if you sneeze while saying it, so I just think that it sounds similar. Here's the point. Carter, played by Chris Tucker, is an idiot. He is categorically a textbook definition of an idiot when it comes to being a police officer, being a responsible police officer, being a responsible human being a very aware and cognitive person and police officer in nearly every single instance. It is a very much not smart ideal situation to have a person in when cognition and perception and being a non-idiot are kind of requirements of the job. But he manages to pull it off, and I mean, keep in mind, this is a comedy movie, so that's kind of the point. He's not supposed to be the most competent at his job. Here's where it comes down to competency, and here's where I get some interesting opinions. I could see somebody telling me, hey, I don't actually like Chris Tucker as an actor. I think he's too much in nearly everything I've seen him in. Now, keep in mind, I'm embodying this from the perspective of somebody telling me this take. I'm not saying this personally. I'm saying I could understand somebody telling me that and genuinely believing it. Personally, I love Chris Tucker. I think he's always too much, and that's what makes him funny. He is a lot. In fact, he's always a bit too much, but he's never too much for me. In my own opinion, he's never too much for me. I find him never all that grating. I find him memorable and entertaining and really funny to watch. And when it comes to playing the role of Carter, what they do to make him just as memorable and interesting and just as much is that even though he is a complete and total idiot at times, he is still smart. Now, keep in mind, he's still a little too much on the side of the idiot, but he's at least smart at certain moments where it kind of counts to be smart. And because of that, I can excuse literally everything he does. Not excuse, but you know what I'm saying. I can move past him being a total idiot for the sake of comedy when he's at least smart 5% of the time. I can accept that. What I can also accept is Jackie Chan, which is the other actor. I specifically skipped over Jackie Chan first because I feel like I can't say a lot of things new about Jackie Chan. We all know who Jackie Chan is. I mean, we know that the action sequences in this movie are going to be good, right? Let's just clarify that. If I told you that the action sequences in this movie with Jackie Chan in it are going to be good, funny, creative, interesting, and very visually appealing to look at, you're already going to know that, right? Just making sure. Just making sure. Okay, so here's the thing about Jackie Chan. When it comes to his dynamic with Carter, he's the stoic one. He's the serious one. He's the smart person out of the two of them. He's not a total idiot. If anything, he's the one carrying the emotional core because he has the connection to the daughter and the father of that daughter. He's friends with both of them. And so when he comes to America trying to find the girl, he's like, this is my friend. I want to help her. And my friend is her father. And I want to help him too. And this is really important to me. And Carter, could you please stop being an idiot? And that's where the comedy comes in. And it comes in full force and never really lets up. This movie keeps going and going and going really, really fast. And the plot just kind of whizzes right by. And it's over in an hour and a half. A very quick, very clean hour and a half. You know what? I think that's great. I love it. I really enjoyed myself. And I also enjoyed the fact that when it comes to our two lead actors and their interactions with each other and the comedy generated between them, I'm very happy that at least 1/4 of the time, those jokes were not rooted in the fact that Jackie Chan's character is Chinese or that Chris Tucker's character is black. I'm really happy that at least 1/4 of the time, the jokes were not centered around that. Okay? That is really good. That's really nice. Thank you for doing that. I understand that there's going to be jokes like that. It's 1998, and we're the human race, and it's America. I'm not expecting perfection here. I'm just pleasantly surprised when 1/4 of the time it's not motivated by stuff like that. It's a nice change of pace. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And because of that, I'd highly recommend the original Rush Hour. If you've never seen it before, you're going to have a fun time. Don't think too much about it. The plot whizzes right by, and it just keeps going. And if you think about it too much, you might hurt your head. But you definitely hurt your head from thinking too much about the plot of the next movie, which will be Rush Hour 2. So stick around for when we jump into Rush Hour 2. That was a bad transition, but you get what I'm saying. Stick around for Rush Hour 2. 88 won the Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our second movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Rush Hour 2 from 2001, available to rent from places such as YouTube, Fandango at Home, and Amazon. For the basic plot summary of Rush Hour 2, we now shift the location to Hong Kong, where we follow Lee and Carter once again as they must travel cross-country to track down members of the Triads and stop some counterfeiting ring that's popping up around in Hong Kong and also in the United States. You know, that kind of a thing. Yeah, that's the plot. So let's get to the movie itself. You may be asking, why are you hesitating, Nathan? What's tripping you up here? Okay, I'll explain what's tripping me up. We have a very interesting kind of conundrum here, because there's always the immediate question that comes up with sequels, which is it worse or better than the original movie? Sometimes it can be worse, oftentimes it's worse, but sometimes it can be better, especially on this show. So, let's address the elephant in the room. Is Rush Hour 2 better than the original Rush Hour? Yes, but only in the ways that count. And that sounds really weird, because you may be asking, what are the ways that count? That's a very odd way of qualifying it. Here, let me explain it. Okay, so the ways this movie is better would be in probably the jokes and the action sequences. For a comedy action movie, you definitely want the stunts and the action sequences themselves to be a bit higher in scale, that you want them to be a bit more fun, a bit more engaging, a lot goofier, maybe with a little bit more variety to them. When comparing them to the original Rush Hour, I'd say that maybe they don't nail the variety part, but they are more large scale, and they're a lot more fun, and they're a lot crazier, and I like them more in nearly every sense of the word. Like, I love them. I love nearly every action sequence in Rush Hour 2, and I loved pretty much all of them in Rush Hour 1. So it's like, how do you improve on what was already really good? Well, they somehow did it. I'm not going to be the one to clarify how. It's Jackie Chan. If you watch any movie with Jackie Chan in it, where he's doing stuff related to martial arts, it's going to be fun and exciting and cool. Okay? I can't be asked to choose which one is better. It's just all fun and cool. It's like trying to ask me to pick my favorite child. I can't do it. I'm not gonna do it. I'm too much of a fan of action movies to, in good conscience, do it. Okay? You can't make me. Now then, when it comes to everything else surrounding Rush Hour 2, I will say that it also manages the comedy a bit better. One thing that the original does is it kind of just keeps each scene sort of contained in on itself, right? There's sometimes these two characters interacting, and that's where the jokes stem from, which would not just be exclusive to Lee and Carter. There are times when Carter is talking to his superiors, and that's where the jokes come from, or he's talking to one of his friends, and that's where the jokes come from. With this movie, it's kind of like the second Naked Gun, in the sense that sometimes in scenes, there will be this very serious moment where Lee is contemplating something about his life, or he's existential, or he's very sad about something that's just recently happened. And then it will hard cut to Carter wandering around doing something random and stupid and yelling because he's wrong, but he likes to think that he's right, and he'll just yell about that. And like I said, because it's Chris Tucker doing it, he goes all out and over yells and just goes 10 times above 11, to the point where it's just really funny to go in between those two moments directly, one after the other. You hear Jackie Chan just being all somber and serious, and then it just cuts to Chris Tucker screaming his head off about something. It's really, really funny. I'm thinking of a specific example, but I'm not going to mention that one because it's just like, it's kind of a disservice to just watching the scene itself. So I'll just kind of leave it there at that explanation. It's really funny, if you couldn't tell from the fact that I'm trying really hard not to laugh. When it comes to the parts that it's worse, I'd say that Rush Hour 2 does fall into the trap of most sequels, which is highlighting the problems with the first movie. Although it also has a pretty significant problem in that the plot is there. And it doesn't really, have an effect on the movie. It doesn't have like a direct impact. It's not exactly super engaging or fun to follow along with. If you've seen the first Rush Hour, you can kind of guess where the plot of the second movie goes. And if you couldn't guess where the plot of the original Rush Hour went, then you maybe haven't seen enough movies to know where tropes go. So when it comes to Rush Hour 2, you'll then go, oh, I've seen the first one, and it was new and interesting. And even then, you might be like, okay, this feels a bit predictable, even coming after the first Rush Hour. So here's the funny part. Here's how I describe the plot of Rush Hour 2. It doesn't get in the way. Now, let me explain. What I mean by that is that it's not an aggravating plot to follow along with. It's not a stagnant one. It doesn't not go anywhere. It's not a boring one. It's just uninteresting. There's a difference between uninteresting and boring that I need to highlight here. Boring implies that you are actively just trying so hard to not tune out. You have to put in effort to not care, or you have to put in effort to try and care about what's going on. That's boredom right there. I would know. I've been bored before. You're either putting an effort to be bored, or it takes so shockingly little amount of effort that it hurts. It really hurts. Uninteresting is that really good middle ground where you don't have to try and you don't care. It's legitimately just the idea of turn your brain off and you just kind of let it go. And you could just sit there and watch it and still enjoy it. Because being bored is not enjoyable when watching a movie, especially a fun or action-oriented movie. When it comes to Rush Hour 2, I could just turn my brain off and effortlessly have fun when the plot came up and was explained to me. I'd just be like, I don't really care what's going on. And I love that right now. I'm really happy that I don't care what's going on right now. I'm actively getting enjoyment out of this movie by stating I don't care about the plot. Because the plot is actually going somewhere, and I don't care where it's going. When it comes to some movies I've watched in the past couple weeks, there's this big difference where either they don't have enough plot there to latch onto and nothing happens, or they have too much plot and I can't keep up. And then I just tune out and I zone in and out of the movie. With Rush Hour 2, I'm zoned in the entire time. I'm not bored. I'm just sitting there enjoying myself. I'm just casually sitting there. And I'm just like, yeah, this is fun. Okay, cool. This plot's being explained. It's going somewhere. And part of the reason this happens is because it's also like nearly exactly the same length as the first movie. It's not longer. The plot does not try to introduce a bunch of new things to really expand the lore of the Rush Hour trilogy. It's just like, yeah, here's what we said in the first movie. Okay, we're gonna brush over that again in this one. It's gonna be kind of repetitive and a little lame if you really think about it, but we're not going to make it so that you can think about it all that much. And so you'll forget how lame it is like 5 seconds later. And my response is cool. Cool. Because of that, I'd recommend Rush Hour 2, just on the sheer basis of like, yeah, it's enjoyable. Cool. And weirdly enough, I'd say the same about the last movie on our watch list, which is Rush Hour 3. Stick around after the break where we jump into that. 88 won the Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our third and final movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Rush Hour 3 from 2007, available to rent from places such as Fandango at Home, YouTube, and Amazon Prime. For the basic plot summary of Rush Hour 3, we jump ahead 3 years after the events of Rush Hour 2, where Lee and Carter must team up yet again and go to France in order to stop the Triads. Yes, the plot is centered around the Triads yet again. Yeah, that's the plot summary of Rush Hour 3. So, here's the thing. When it comes to the quality of Rush Hour 3, it's not the best. It's not great. You know, it's kind of stupid. And the plot is so there. If anything, it's so there it's not there. Just like Rush Hour 2. And here's the thing. At first, I cared that it was not as good as Rush Hour 2, and the plot was even less of a point compared to Rush Hour 2. At first. Eventually, though, I learned to stop caring. I learned that I could just not care and sit down and watch and enjoy Rush Hour 3 for what it was. And granted, at first, it doesn't make a good kind of initial impression that the entire movie is just going to kind of be out of touch and not really in line with the other two movies, and it's not going to be as funny or engaging and action-packed. And, I mean, it's not overall, but I just kind of got okay with that the more time went on. Eventually, I was just like, okay, I'm sitting here watching this movie. Might as well kind of enjoy myself. And you know what? Rush Hour 3 provided enough escapism to kind of enjoy myself. I wasn't bored. Yet again, there's a big difference. I was never bored with Rush Hour 3. I wasn't really tuning it out. At times, I was just kind of pausing and not really watching it. Not because I was bored. I was just like, okay, I could do this right now because I think this is kind of important to look into. You know, being a busy person who has other obligations in life, I can't just sit there and watch the movie front to back all in one sitting. So if I go on my phone sometimes, it's like, oh, maybe the movie's not interesting enough, or maybe I'm just like trying to get something else done. And the fact that I actually pause the movie to go and do those things is really important to mention, because it means that the movie is engaging enough for me to come back and continue watching it and not just have it on in the background. It's good enough to not be boring where I just tune it out and want to get through it. I was just savoring the time. Well, not even savoring. I was just enjoying the time. I think what really helps is that all three of these movies are like an hour and a half. They're not going to hurt you, and you just watch it and you're done with it. I honestly, there's so much I could talk about, and yet there's so little I have to say. I could talk about, you know, the fact that Rush Hour 3 does not follow along with the great color theory that was used in Rush Hour, the original, and Rush Hour 2. One thing that you kind of notice with the original Rush Hour is that when Lee is coming to America, and he's never been there before, he's wearing red. And most of the time, Carter is wearing blue. And it's kind of this nice thing wherein it visually distinguishes the two of them. It kind of signifies that Lee is the outsider, maybe the bad one, or maybe there's so many ways you could interpret the color red in that context. But at the very least, you understand maybe he's not evil, I should clarify, but he's different from Carter, who's wearing blue. That kind of contrast also leads nicely into the fact that they are police officers, and red and blue is what is usually on sirens and stuff like that. And then when it comes to Rush Hour 2, most of the time Carter's wearing red and Lee's wearing blue because they're in Hong Kong. And Carter has never been to Hong Kong, so he's wearing red and Lee's wearing blue. It's kind of this, again, nice visual switch up where you show that Carter is the one who's not in his depth, or he's out of his depth, more specifically, fish out of water kind of a thing. like the first movie was doing. It's so simple, but it's something I really liked about the first two movies. And of course, because this is the third movie, they didn't bring it back. And you know what? I wasn't that broken up about it. I was just kind of sitting there enjoying it. I was sad to see it go, but I wasn't that sad. It was just kind of this, I kind of was hoping that they'd bring it back. Have them maybe both be wearing, maybe a red shirt with a blue overcoat or something like that. Have them both be out of their depth because they're going to France. They've both never been there. And I think it kind of does it at certain points, but most of the time it doesn't. So, okay, moving on. It's interesting to just talk about these movies, especially the third one, because some of these jokes in these movies are not culturally appropriate in our modern day. Let's just put it that way nicely. In case you don't know already, some of the jokes made in the Rush Hour franchise are not acceptable in our current year. And it's kind of a baffling sort of history piece that they were ever okay back in 1998 or 2001 or 2007. It's a bit interesting to see how they were okay, and you at first can kind of just laugh at them and move on with your day. When it comes to Rush Hour 3, they're just kind of blatant with it to the point where I was not laughing at the jokes themselves. I wasn't going along with the jokes and thinking they were funny and well crafted. I was sitting there laughing at the fact that clearly whoever wrote it and whoever made this movie thought that was a funny joke, thought that qualified as a funny joke. And because of that, I was definitely laughing at it. I wasn't laughing with it. I still felt like kind of a terrible person for laughing at some of the more inappropriate ones, but it was like in this weird meta-textual way where I'm just like, whoever thought that was an actual good joke is not a talented and funny person, and that makes me laugh because they're writing a comedy movie. But the fact that I'm laughing implies that it's at least somewhat funny in some sense of the word, so they gotta be at least somewhat of a funny person, right? All of this existentialism around Rush Hour does not sound right. But here's the thing, when it comes to existentialism in Rush Hour, here's how I can kind of sum up my overall feelings on this trilogy. For the past, maybe 8 weeks, I have been talking about trilogies that really fall into the mediocrity category. I've had some stinkers. I've watched some movies that I'm just like, this isn't very good. I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't really like this part. This is mediocre. What am I watching? What's going on? This is infuriating. This is frustrating. This is aggravating. This is et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I get so really impassioned about it. And I still feel really annoyed with those movies. And it just gets to a point where I'm just like, I'm trudging through the pits of mediocrity right now. Is there any end in sight? And when I watched Rush Hour, I was pleasantly surprised. And when I watched Rush Hour 2 and 3, I was pleasantly surprised to find a trilogy that is just fine all the way through. I, in good conscience, cannot say for certain that they are bad. I cannot say that they are aggravating. The second one doesn't really fall off after the first one. They're all just fine. And that's completely fine. You know, sometimes when it comes to I just got distracted again. Here's a point I have to really emphasize. Whenever I say a trilogy of movies is mediocre, what I mean by that is I'm considering the entire trilogy as a whole. And I'm sitting there going, okay, the first one's good, and the next two do not live up to that potential, and they fall off significantly. That's what I'm saying. The trilogy as a whole is mediocre. When you take Rush Hour trilogy, or the Rush Hour trilogy, I should say, as an entire package, you're not left with a mediocre trilogy. You're left with a fine trilogy, where all of them are just kind of on the same level playing field. There's no drop-off. The first one's good. You'll like it. You'll enjoy it. And then the next one comes out and you're like, I like this, I enjoy this. And then you'll watch the next one and you're just like, okay, I also like this and enjoy this. And that's really, really, really nice after dealing with so many mediocre trilogies. That's so nice. With all that being said, thank you all for listening in to What to Watch Wednesdays tonight. My name is Nathan. I will be back in a couple weeks, which will be next quarter, because this is the week before finals week. I will not be back next week for What to Watch Wednesdays. But when I am back, it'll be on Wednesdays from 8 to 9 p.m. here on 88.1 The Burg, as always, where I'll be telling you all what to watch. And if you want to follow along and figure out when the next episode will be, follow along on Instagram and YouTube at What to Watch Wednesdays, all in word, no caps, no spaces. Good night, everybody.